Assalamu alaikum, or, as some of you may know it, peace be upon you. My name is Elias Mercer. For most of my life, I believed I understood darkness. I had grown up in a small Muslim community outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My father was a quiet man, my grandfather even quieter. But people came to my grandfather from counties away when something was wrong inside their homes. When children woke up screaming in languages they had never learned. When shadows moved against the light. When families heard voices calling from rooms that had been locked for years. My grandfather never called himself a holy man. He always said, "We are nothing. God allows us to help. The moment you think the power is yours, you have already opened the door." I heard those words 1,000 times, and still I forgot them. I finished my religious studies young. I memorized the Quran, served as the muezzin at our local mosque, married, had children, and lived a quiet life. I was not rich, but I was respected. People trusted me. They came to me when something felt wrong, when prayer alone did not seem enough, when fear had already settled into the walls. And because some of those cases ended well, I began to believe I was stronger than I really was. That was my first mistake. The second mistake came on the 9th of October 2015. It was just after ASR prayer when a middle-aged man approached me at the mosque. His name was Caleb Reed. He looked exhausted, like he had not slept in weeks. His eyes were red, his shirt was wrinkled, and his hands shook when he spoke. "Imam Elias," he said, "please, I need help with my son." I asked him what had happened. He lowered his voice. "My boy doesn't sleep anymore. At night he sits awake talking to someone who isn't there. Sometimes he says things like, 'Let him come in,' or 'He's almost here.' Most of the words don't even sound like English." I asked if his son had studied any foreign languages. Caleb shook his head. "That's the thing. Some of it sounds Arabic, but my son barely knows the alphabet. He doesn't know enough to speak like that." Then Caleb told me other things. He said people in the house had seen the same stranger in different rooms at the same time. His business had suddenly collapsed. His wife had become sick. Their livestock had died without explanation. Every blessing in that house had dried up, one by one. By the time he finished speaking, it was time for Maghrib. I told him I would come after prayer. He looked relieved. I wish I had told him no. After Maghrib, Caleb and I drove 25 minutes into the hills. The roads were narrow and broken, winding between dark trees and empty fields. The farther we went, the heavier my chest became. By the time we reached his house, I felt as if something inside me was whispering, "Turn back." It was not fear exactly, it was warning. But pride is louder than warning. I followed Caleb inside. His house looked ordinary, too ordinary. Warm lights, framed family photos, shoes by the door, the smell of tea from the kitchen. But underneath all that, there was something else. A silence. Not peace, silence. The kind that feels like someone is holding their breath. After we sat for a few minutes, Caleb led me upstairs to his son's room. The boy was 17. His name was Ryan. He sat on the bed with his knees pulled to his chest. His hair hung over his forehead, and when I entered the room, he smiled. Not like a child. Not like someone sick. He smiled like he had been waiting for me. Then he said, "Do you know what number you are?" I looked at Caleb. He swallowed and said, "6 men came before you, clerics, healers, people who said they knew how to deal with this. Every one of them left after seeing Ryan. The next day, they refused to come back." Ryan's smile widened. I ignored him and asked his name. The boy tilted his head. "I have had many names," he whispered. "You knew one of them once." I felt my skin go cold. I began reciting quietly in my heart. Before a word left my mouth, Ryan's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. "Don't read," he said. His voice was still soft, but it was not his. "Don't read, Imam. Stop right there." At first, I thought maybe he was acting. Maybe he had watched too many horror movies. Maybe he had learned how to scare people. But I had not spoken aloud. I had only begun in my heart. Ryan leaned closer. "You want to fight us?" he whispered. "Then first become like us." I said nothing. He smiled. The room seemed to grow colder. "Sleep is mercy," he continued. "Sleep belongs to the weak. We do not sleep. Stay awake for 7 nights, Elias. Just 7. Then you'll hear what we hear, you'll see what we see. You'll become one of us, I said, Astaghfirullah. Then I gripped his fingers and began reciting aloud. The smile disappeared from his face. Ryan suddenly lunged forward and bit my ear. I shouted and stumbled back. The pain was sharp, hot, real. Caleb rushed in, terrified, asking what happened. I did not answer. I only asked, how long has he been like this? 4 months, Caleb said. 4 months. That was too long. I left that house unsettled, but not defeated. At least that is what I told myself. Outside, the road was dark. I walked alone toward my car. The pavement was cracked and uneven, and there were no streetlights for half a mile. As I walked, I saw something moving ahead of me. A snake. It slithered across the road slowly, almost guiding me. Every time I stepped near a broken patch of asphalt, it moved just enough for me to see the danger. When I finally reached the lit part of the road, the snake stopped. Then it turned its head toward me. I swear to you, it shook its head, not like an animal, like a person saying no. Then it vanished into the grass. That night, after I returned home, my phone rang. It was a call from the old family farm in West Virginia. There had been a fire. The barn was gone. The animals inside were dead. Before I could even process the news, someone knocked on my front door. I opened it and found my son, Jonah, standing there with his arm around a neighbor's shoulder. His face was pale and one of his shoes was soaked in blood. A motorcycle had lost control and hit him from behind while he was walking home. His foot was badly injured. That was when I understood. The thing in Caleb's house was warning me. It was telling me to stay away. A wise man would have listened, but I was not wise. I was angry. I told no one what I suspected, not my wife, not my children, not the imam. I convinced myself that I was protecting them. In truth, I was protecting my pride. That night, I attempted something I had not done in years. I reached out to something my grandfather had once warned me about, an old presence that had helped him in certain matters. I do not want to explain more than that. Some doors should remain unnamed, but when I asked about Ryan Reed, the answer came back clearly. Leave it alone. It told me that if I treated this as revenge, I would lose more than I could imagine. I refused to listen. The next evening, I gathered my books, oils, water, and written prayers and returned to Caleb's house. Ryan was waiting. He did not speak at first. He only watched me. I began without conversation. I recited, prayed, and worked steadily, refusing to let his words distract me. For a while, he laughed. Then he became quiet. Slowly, he leaned toward my ear. You know, he whispered, I could have shown your son the road to hell last night. My hands tightened. I warned you, he said. But you came back. I grabbed him by the collar and demanded, who are you? What do you want? Why are you touching my family? Ryan's face twisted with rage. The room changed. The walls trembled. The windows rattled. A wind began moving inside the room, though every window was shut. Caleb shouted from the hallway. I kept reciting. Ryan fell to the floor. He cursed me. He described how he would kill me, how he would break my wife, how he would take my children one by one. Then Caleb ran into the room and grabbed me from behind. Stop, he screamed. I brought you here to help my son, not murder him. I tried to explain, but he would not listen. Get out, he shouted. Get out of my house. Humiliated and furious, I gathered my things. As I left, Ryan looked up from the floor and smiled. You'll receive payment tonight, he said. Caleb called after me from the porch, but I ignored him. That was my third mistake. After that night, Caleb called many times. I never answered. I told myself he had insulted me. I told myself he did not deserve my help. I told myself his son was no longer my responsibility. But evil does not need your permission to follow you home. A week later, the first incident happened. It was a hot afternoon. I was resting near the balcony of our apartment. We lived on the 4th floor, high enough that no one from outside could see in. My wife, Layla, had been cleaning with the help of a distant cousin named Marissa. I remember hearing them talking as they swept the bedroom. Then they left. A few minutes later, Layla came back and told me to come inside from the balcony. I closed the balcony door behind me, locked it, and sat on the bed. That is when someone outside said, "Brother Elias." The voice came from the balcony. Layla and I froze. I pulled back the curtain. Marissa was standing outside on the balcony. But that was impossible. The balcony door was locked. The metal railing surrounded the entire space. There was no staircase, no ladder, no way for anyone to get there. Marissa smiled at me, but the smile was wrong. Too wide, too hungry. "Open the door," she said. "I came to work." "It's been so long, brother," Layla began shaking. I tried to recite Ayat al-Kursi, but my tongue felt swollen. The words would not come. I could not breathe. The thing wearing Marissa's face stepped forward. Its foot passed through the balcony door. Layla screamed and fainted. I stared like a madman. I tried to remember every prayer I had ever learned, every protection my grandfather had taught me, every method I had used against other things. But all I could think was, I am Elias Mercer. I have defeated worse than this. Do you hear the arrogance? Even then, I was thinking of myself. When I finally closed my eyes and forced the words of God from my chest, the room went silent. When I opened them, the balcony was empty. Layla was still unconscious on the floor. I rushed out and called for my children. Jonah and my daughter, Hannah, came from the kitchen. "Didn't you hear your mother scream?" I demanded. Jonah looked confused. "We were coming," he said, "but you stopped us." "I what?" "You were in the dining room," Hannah said. "You told us Mom screamed because of a bug. You said not to bother her." I had been in the bedroom the entire time. So who had spoken to my children wearing my face? The second incident happened before Fajr. The power was out that morning. The streets were black. As I stepped outside to go to the mosque, a man stood by the curb holding an old lantern. He wore a long coat and had a scarf pulled over his head. "Come on, Imam," he said. "I'll walk with you." No one used lanterns anymore. Not in that neighborhood. I asked who he was. He did not answer. He walked beside me in silence all the way to the mosque. When we reached the steps, he finally turned. "You still don't recognize me?" His face was hidden. I said nothing. He chuckled. "I helped you today. If you had walked alone in the dark, something would have happened to you. You would have suffered. And in suffering, maybe you would have called on God sincerely. Maybe your sins would have been forgiven." The man leaned closer. "I cannot allow that. If God forgives you, how will I destroy you?" Then he walked away, not into the street, not around the corner. He simply faded into the darkness. That was when I understood the true cruelty of what had followed me. It was not only trying to hurt me, it was trying to keep me from God. The third incident destroyed my family. One night, Layla brought dinner to my room. That was unusual. I normally ate at the dining table, but she seemed tired and I did not question it. I ate slowly. The food tasted strange, metallic, sour. After finishing, I set the plate aside. A few minutes later, Layla entered the room and screamed. Jonah rushed in behind her. "What did you eat?" he shouted. I looked at the plate. It was not food. It was rotten flesh, blackened blood, and pieces of animal organs no human being could swallow. I began vomiting. Then I looked up. Behind Jonah, my wife was standing in the doorway, smiling. But Layla was also beside me, trembling. The thing in the doorway wore my wife's face. I knew then it had entered my home completely. I told Jonah everything. I told him about Caleb Reed, about Ryan, about the snake, about the thing that wore faces. I told him his mother needed protection, prayer, and help immediately. At first, he did not believe me. Then I showed him the signs, the marks on the walls, the smell in the hallway, the strange bruises appearing on Layla's arms. Finally, Jonah agreed. I went to the mosque to gather what I needed. When I came back, I found a scene no father should ever see. Jonah lay unconscious in the corner. Layla was tied to the bed, and I was standing over her. Not me, something wearing me. It was reciting words that sounded like Arabic, but were not Arabic. Every syllable felt broken, diseased. It struck Layla again and again, drawing blood from her arms and shoulders. Then the thing wearing my face turned and smiled. After that, I remember nothing. When I woke, Jonah was staring at me with hatred. Layla was crying. Hannah was bandaging her mother's wounds. I tried to explain that it had not been me. Jonah would not listen, so I took him to the mosque. I asked the caretaker to tell Jonah I had been there only minutes earlier. The caretaker frowned. "Brother Elias," he said, "you came here not long ago bragging that you had beaten your wife. Now you're asking where you were." Jonah and I looked at each other. That was the moment he understood. Something was not only attacking us, it was destroying my name. After that, I stopped going to the mosque. People whispered. Some called me a hypocrite. Some called me dangerous. Some said I had lost my mind. Maybe I had. My hair began falling out. My teeth darkened. My skin changed. I forgot prayers I had known since childhood. Some mornings I woke not knowing where I had been the night before. Then came the final night. Layla was away with family because her father had passed. I was home with Jonah and Hannah. A little after midnight, I lay in bed when I heard something moving underneath me, scratching, breathing. Then footsteps came up the stairs outside our apartment, slow, heavy. One step at a time. They stopped outside my door. The air whispered into my ear, "There, there. There, there." I became freezing cold. I went to the balcony and looked out into the black. Two eyes stared back at me from the darkness, not from the street. From the air, I stumbled back and hit the light switch. Nothing happened. Then the floor beneath me seemed to open, not physically, but somehow I felt myself falling through a tunnel inside my own room. I screamed, and after that, my memory ends. What happened next was told by my son. Jonah said he and Hannah heard me scream and ran to my room. The door was locked, which made no sense. Layla and I never slept with the door locked. With the neighbors' help, they broke it open. They found me twisted on the bed, my fingers bent backward, my mouth open in a horrible smile, my skin pale, my eyes completely black. Everyone who had come to help ran from the room. Jonah called my oldest friend, Yusuf Gray. Yusuf had studied with me when we were young. Later he traveled, learned from scholars, and became known as someone who understood these matters far better than I ever had. When Yusuf arrived, he listened to everything. Then he said one sentence that terrified Jonah. "This thing knows your father." Yusuf later explained that sleep is one of God's mercies. Every living creature needs rest. To reject sleep completely is to break something inside the human soul. He asked Jonah if Ryan Reed had ever told me not to sleep. Jonah said yes. Yusuf immediately understood. It was inviting him, he said, not just haunting him, inviting him. Yusuf believed the entity had not started with Ryan. Ryan had only been bait. The true target was me. Years earlier, I had once boasted about defeating something dark. I had even said words I should never have said. Today, even God will not save you from me. I said that to a creature while trying to trap it. I thought I was defending people, but my words were full of pride. According to Yusuf, one of the entities that had once helped me became corrupted after that event. It saw my arrogance. It saw the weakness hiding under my knowledge. And years later, it returned, not as an enemy from outside, but as something that knew my methods, my family, my habits, my sins. It knew how to imitate me. It knew how to confuse me. It knew how to make me doubt everyone around me. Yusuf performed ruqya over me with two other men. They recited for hours. At one point, the thing inside me spoke. It said it had used Ryan Reed to bring Caleb to me. It said it had made me believe Caleb threw me out, when in truth I had walked out on my own. Later, when Yusuf called Caleb, Caleb confirmed it. He had never kicked me out. He had called again and again to thank me. Because after I left, Ryan recovered. The whole thing had been a trap. During the ruqya, Yusuf saw something impossible. For a moment, he thought he was no longer reciting over me. He saw Jonah tied to the bed instead. Jonah screamed in pain. The men panicked and untied him. The boy ran from the room. But when they stepped into the hallway, Jonah was sitting on the couch. He looked up and asked, "Is Dad okay?" The thing had created a false image of Jonah, a deception. Yusuf realized then what kind of entity it was. A mimic, a face stealer. Something that survives by wearing the familiar. They found me still tied to the bed exactly where I had been. But something was wrong. The entity was not fully inside me. It was hiding somewhere else. Then, from Hannah's room, they heard laughter. A dry clicking laugh. Yusuf, Jonah, and the others froze. From behind Hannah's closed door, a harsh voice said, "I am leaving." Then it laughed again. "But I am taking the girl with me." Jonah screamed his sister's name. The voice continued, "I lived in her for so long and none of you knew. You looked everywhere except the quiet room. You searched the father, the son, the wife, but never the daughter." Yusuf began reciting louder. The voice grew angry. "You are weak, all of you. I will come back to Elias every day. I will sit inside his head. I will keep him from remembering. I will keep him from saying the name of God when pain comes. And when he forgets God completely, I will take him too." Then everything went silent. When they broke into Hannah's room, she was gone. The walls were covered in black symbols, marks scratched into paint, shapes no one in the family had ever seen before. Layla had been away. No man in the house ever entered Hannah's room out of respect for her privacy. She cleaned it herself. She kept it locked most of the time. It had chosen the perfect hiding place. To this day, I do not remember my daughter. That is the worst part. Jonah tells me I had 2 children, a son and a daughter. He shows me photographs. But when I look at the girl beside him, my mind slides away from her face. I know I should feel something. I know I should remember. But I don't. The doctors say trauma can erase memory. Yusuf says, the thing kept its promise. People in town still whisper about me. Some believe I beat my wife. Some believe I lost my faith. Some believe I went mad. I no longer give the call to prayer. I no longer lead anyone. Some days Jonah has to remind me when it is time to pray. I was once a Hafiz, and now there are mornings when I cannot complete a single chapter without help. Maybe this is my punishment. Maybe it is mercy that I am still alive. Jonah asked for this story to be told because he wants people to understand something his father learned too late. Knowledge can save you, but pride can turn that same knowledge into a doorway. I thought I was fighting darkness, but somewhere along the way I began admiring my own shadow, and something inside that shadow noticed. So if you ever help someone, do not think the power belongs to you. If people praise you, lower your head. If evil runs from your words, remember who gave those words strength. Because the thing that destroyed my family did not enter through a graveyard, a cursed house, or a ritual circle, it entered through arrogance. And once it learned my face, it wore it better than I ever did. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more dark, true horror story.